I'd love to welcome you to the Automotive Industry Stakeholder Roundtable. The importance of roundtables and discussions like this is for all of us in the sector to find opportunity for alignment in the work that we are doing, to share our priorities, to showcase progress, to highlight challenges, to lift up opportunities, and I think most importantly, we're also going to be looking at how do we remove bottlenecks and blockages so that we can do even better going forward in this very, very critical conversation. And it would not be possible without quite a few people lending their vote of support. And the first one is the Honorable MEC for Gauteng Economic Development, Ms. Tasneem Motara. Thank you so much for joining us. And also the GGDA Group Board members, the HOD of the Gauteng Department of Economic Development, Mr. Blake Mosley Lefotola, the GGDA Group CEO, Mr. Saki Zamqaka, the AIDC Chairperson, Ms. Melanie Van Eck, Transnet, the AXA CEO, who's joined us today as well, and part of the panels, the DTIC, and sponsors Max Prof. I'd like to invite Ms. Melanie Van Eck, the AIDC Board Chairperson, to join us for a welcome and just giving us an overview of what it is that we are trying to achieve. So let's give her a round of applause.
For us as the AIDC, this year marks a very important milestone as we celebrate 20 years as an agency of government in the automotive sector. With great pride, we are grateful to commemorate these 2 decades of existence within government and within the sector itself. For the past 20 years, the AIDC stood as a beacon of experience and an agency of government steadfastly committed to fostering innovation and at least grown sustainability within the automotive industry. Our journey has been characterized by resilience, adaptability, and reference in pursuit of excellence, guided by the unwavering support and collaboration of you, our stakeholders. As we reflect on this significant milestone, we are reminded of the countless achievements and milestones of the transformative initiatives that we have shaped our sector and our collective effort in this industry. From pioneering research and development projects and fostering strategies, partnerships, and facilitating skills development, the AIDC has been at the forefront of driving progress and prosperity within the automotive sector. However, our journey wouldn't have been possible without the steadfast support from our and unwavering commitment from our partners. Our purpose today is twofold. We are here to come and discuss the logistics within the automotive sector and explore the growing landscape of new energy vehicles. These topics are not merely diverse trends, but are deeply intertwined in shaping the trajectory of our industry's future.
The economy of Gauteng is got 5 corridors, and I'm not going to mention all the corridors, but the northern corridor, which is the city of Tshwane, is where the automotive hub is based. What do we have out there? We have the automotive supply park, which the chairperson mentioned. The automotive supply park has 160 hectares of land, of which only 60 hectares of that land is developed. We house some of the major multinationals such as Feltex, Yangfeng, and DSV. Some of you may or may not know that Stellantis, which are the owners of brands such as Peugeot, Opel, Fiat, actually distribute their aftermarket parts out of our park in Roslyn to the whole of Southern Africa. So the challenge of logistics is one that we have to face and solve for. And that's what we're hoping to achieve today. We have also faced a challenge in the automotive industry of transformation. And the issue of transformation is one that it's not spoken about enough with the different OEMs and with the Tier 1 and Tier 2 suppliers. To this end, the AIDC has a very robust incubation program, where we incubate young black entrepreneurs to become part of the supply chain of the automotive industry. The tough discussions that we need to have with the OEMs and the tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers is for them to be able to give, or at least to award, some purchase orders to some of these entrepreneurs and actually graduate them or give them graduation opportunities into the value chain of the automotive.
I think it's been very well laid out what the challenge and what the opportunities are for us, and I think most importantly the ambition. We have great things to achieve in terms of improving just the logistics in order to see the spin back and the growth in revenue and the growth in our GDP just from this one particular sector. Joining me, I've got from the IDC, Ms. Tieneke Jensma, to talk about, for me, how the IDC is rising to the occasion within this particular sector and division of the IDC. Interestingly, I think Ms. Mpumi Mpofu from AXA is also going to give us a new perspective on what the opportunities are from an air freight industry. What is critical is for us to understand how we are populating the pipeline of people to work in the industry, how we are doing job creation, how we are incubating the future owners of that business. That's going to be done by Asanda Mzinyati. But perhaps to start off with you, Ms. Jensma, from the IDC's perspective, what is the financial opportunity or the financial investment or the backing required to make things grow sustainably and substantially?
So this is a very important project for not only just for the IDC, but for the country. And I come from the Industrial Zones program within the IDC, so we support critical projects and special economic zones. For this particular one, we are looking at different components, from the infrastructure element to the operations where you bring in your wagons and your locomotives and operationalize the rail. It's a big, and then the Ford investment. I think we've heard a lot about the Ford investment. So just for the infrastructure itself, we are looking at 2 billion. And this is a Transnet function, but we are working with the state, we're working with the Treasury to get that off the ground. And then there's a 5 billion investment that has to come in terms of bringing the operational element, which is the wagons. And I think you have heard that Ford here is investing 16 billion, which is a big win for South Africa. There was competition to get this 16 billion investment and more, because 5 billion has already been invested in the vehicles. But also, from the DTIC perspective, DTIC, or maybe the state, including province and the municipality, have established this special economic zone, the Tshwane Automotive Special Economic Zone, and a lot of investment has gone in there, about 4 billion. So this is a big injection into the economy.
Ms. Mpofu, from an AXA perspective, also clear strategy on where the investment is required for the automotive industry.
AXA is legislatively assigned 9 commercial airports in South Africa. There are 135 airports in this country, licensed. We just do the big 9. Others are privately owned, Lanseria, Kruger National Park, etc. I'm sure people know. Some are provincially owned, some are municipal owned. Now, the importance of laying that out is that we really want to demonstrate that we have a network. OR Tambo is our cargo hub, and the throughput at OR Tambo currently is about 360,000 tons. But we're on the cusp of making a big investment, which is what we're engaging the sector about primarily, to build a new facility called a cargo midfield terminal that basically would establish capacity of 750,000 tons annually, first, phase 1, and then 1 million in phase 2. And that basically takes us about 5 to 7 years to complete. We've identified and we've really are awakening a giant in slumber, and that giant in slumber is air freight. Air freight in our country has not been operating effectively at all, actually. Our current throughput in the network, 400,000 tons, but effectively with the investments we're going to make, we're going to push that up to 1.5 million. The problem we have is that airports company in its own right has really been focused on passengers. Our capacity for passengers is 54 million passengers in the entire network, but cargo's always been just the poor cousin. But that's really been because there hasn't been a drive. The freight and logistics programs that everybody knows about have been talking about rail and road and rail and road. But we pride ourselves because we're probably the most efficient out of all of them. We operate in the aviation sector on what we call on-time performance of 95%. You know this. You are passengers. By definition, we want to offer that to the logistics environment and offer them the same efficiencies or better efficiencies, particularly for time-sensitive commodities and for security-sensitive commodities. So we've identified specific areas. What we're asking the policymakers to do is to prioritize and do what we call commodity designation for air freight, so that we have the certainty we can do the investments. The Midfield Terminal, cargo of Midfield Terminal, we're investing 5.7 billion, and that project is really starting now. OR Tambo is our cargo hub, but MEC would know we also are developing an aerotropolis in that area. Spoken about a long time, but one of the areas we're hoping to impact on is also to grow an aerospace hub at OR Tambo so that it becomes both a cargo hub at aerotropolis. So our invitation to the automotive sector is really to prioritize automotive parts. We have connections on the African continent. I said we had 9 airports here, which are AXA owned. We have 9 airports that are domestically owned that we are aiming to transfer to ourselves. But we also had a plan for 9 airports on the continent. Can I just indicate, we also developed Mumbai Airport in India. We also developed Guarulhos Airport in Brazil and operated and managed it. We came out of India, we're still in Brazil. But that also means we have this network on the continent. In the context of the African Continental Free Trade Area, we're convinced that right now, when the ports and other people are still, seaports, are still thinking of doing things that they will only do in 10 years, we want to get on in aviation and deliver that. And we can, but we've got partnerships with airports, a lot of which we're either managing or developing or helping develop on the continent that can start that activity right now that gets us to those efficiency levels, as I said, on-time performance of 95%. So we believe, and we're targeting this sector, that with the investment we're making, we're dedicating a clear line. We've also targeted pharmaceuticals, textiles, light products like that, electronics, fresh produce, which is very often caught in a, the Transnet person here, caught in a truck, blueberries caught in a truck in Pietermaritzburg and queuing for 3 days to get into Durban Port. We can't afford those inefficiencies if this economy is going to grow. And more importantly, we are offering a service that should be able to alleviate on those dedicated commodities, targeting automotive parts and coming online into our network of airports, but also network of African destinations where we have a relationship in those airports. Eventually, selfishly, it will get us to develop cargo facilities in those African airports as well. And as they say, bingo's the game. And we really can see true realization of the African Continental Free Trade Area supporting this particular industry and specifically delivering a service. So in the investment we're going to make, the 5.7 billion, what we're looking for as an outcome of engaging the sector right now is a very clear indication of what is your space requirement, what should we reserve for you, and you're with us, we're in partnership, and we're good to go. Because we are at the stage at which we're finalizing our plans for that midfield cargo, and we want to dedicate very specifically a space. Finally, in the 9 domestic airports that are not in AXA's ownership, but which we are managing on behalf of others, one of them is Vanderboom. Vanderboom Airport is located in the northern part of Pretoria, or Tshwane, and we have been contracted to manage it on behalf of the city that is. It's not its core business. It's just not its core business. It is our core business. So we're doing the master plan for Vanderboom, and we're developing runway capacity, and we'll develop cargo facilities. And in fact, the reason we took the opportunity for Vanderboom is specifically to service this IDZ, this node in Tshwane, and force a collaboration so that Vanderboom can be used for that basis. We just thought it was important we get hold of it before some private sector person does it. We better have off having Vanderboom in the state hands so that we can make these clear connections of servicing this sector and making sure they get the best freight services for their exports into the continent from Vanderboom, which is under our ownership. Thanks.
So I think it's a very compelling case, but simply put, you're saying that the infrastructure, the systems, you already have them. You are transferring everything that you have to now focus in on cargo and for the sector. So you're duplicating and riding on current efficiencies. And we'll come back and have a further conversation. The big challenge in the sector is transformation, and we have to deal with that up front. Mr. Mzinyati, in your view, give us a clear perspective of what the transformation challenges are, because it is important that as we go forward as an empowered industry and one that believes and delivers on equity for all. Your perspective on that?
The challenge that is there when it comes to the transformation is the fact that anything that is associated with SMMEs or a black person is going to be poor quality. And when it comes to the auto industry, we are not saying when we transform the industry we're going to compromise the quality. As the AIDC, we come and bring that safety net in the sense that as the OEM, we will partner with your tier 1, tier 2 suppliers. But the challenges that could actually lead to the line stoppages, we'll minimize them through our expertise that we've got in-house, various departments like the industry development, which will safeguard that there is no impact into your quality. We have been running these programs with the 2 manufacturers, and we've been successful into those. Ford, we've got an incubation program. At Nissan, we've got an incubation program. These SMMEs, we are actually training them so that they can go out and graduate and start their own facilities. The CEO has mentioned that we have had success stories where black individuals are actually supplying to tier 1 suppliers for the OEMs. And we graduated last year, and we've got others that are going to be graduating. So to give comfort to the auto industry, as the AIDC was saying, we're coming with that safety net, and we're engaging also with other OEMs outside the province of Gauteng, having discussions with the Stellantis in the Eastern Cape to set up a supplier automotive park for them in the Kucha IDZ. We're having discussions with trade and investment in KZN to assist Toyota in setting up. And one of the things that we're moving towards now is the accelerator model, because you would find that though that the black industrialists are less than 5% of when it comes to the component manufacturers, is not to say they're not there. But we need to have an acceleration model whereby we take them, we move them to the next level. As you know, in order to supply to the OEM, there are various quality standards. There are those that fall within the Japanese automotive manufacturing industries. They've got their own standards. And then there are those that fall within the German standards. So we are equipping them and getting them ready so that they can meet all the manufacturing quality standards that are required. And these are done by the personnel of the AIDC. Hence, I was saying, when we engage with the OEMs, we come as the AIDC as the safety net. AIDC is a government-owned institution under the Department of Economic Development, Gauteng. So we are there to support, and the industry shouldn't be scared or be shy in engaging and giving these opportunities to the black industrialists. Because as the AIDC, we're there to ensure that no standards are dropped.
There's clearly a problem with simplification. We're creating complexity where there should be simplicity. There's probably a brand and a marketing job that is not being adequately done. We watch television, right? So when you think electric vehicles, you're thinking something very different to what the one you currently have in your car park. And BMW spoiled it. Is BMW here today? Remember when BMW came out with theirs? I mean, they had to make the doors go upward and the seats colored by olives from Italy. They messed it for us because they made it look as if it was this sophisticated end-to-end business that only sophisticated brands could do. How do we capture the market? How do we change mindsets and enable us to move at a faster pace and just demystify the industry as a whole? And the question is to you, please, Renee.
Our challenge in this particular discussion is not one of, can we respond to technology? The point that Winston was making is that I think in South Africa we need to very quickly have an electric vehicle ecosystem that is up and running. People are buying vehicles, people are selling vehicles, people are repairing vehicles, that they have an EV battery or electric motor or whatever the technology is. It needs to start happening and happening quickly. And that talks to, let's call it the after production or after sales, after market retail space, which I think we've been a bit slow in getting adoption on. So I think the point that Winston makes is probably the key one. And I think we are reliant on the vehicle brands here in South Africa. And it's not just the OEMs, there's a whole host of other brands, excuse me, that sell vehicles in South Africa. Many people don't realize that I think as consumers, per capita, individual per capita purchasing power that we as consumers in South Africa have, we've got bigger choice than the US of vehicles in South Africa, but you got to ask the question, why don't we have those EVs or choice, and it's not being run out. So when you ask how do we demystify, for me it becomes, demystification happens when we start seeing a prevalence of these vehicles on the roads. You've got the infrastructure to support them, you've got the retail networks that are rolling them out, and you've got a consumer that wants to buy them. It's as simple as that.
And now let's move on to a less simpler environment, but we do want a simple answer. Dr. Richmore. We want a simple answer. CSIR is the science engine behind a lot of what we do. However, you've been impacted by a lot of the changes that have happened in the country. So the role that you traditionally would have played or would like to play, I'm assuming, and I'm putting on the table, has been impacted based on conversations with people in your environment. Are you seeing a different way, or are you seeing is the organization seeing this as an opportunity? And what is it doing to rise to the opportunities of the changes in the industry?
There's a perception that CSIR has got a huge pot of funds, and if they see something, they just start to research on it. I think he was right when he tells you that the technology to start the cell manufacturing started at CSIR. So even if you read the documents that speaks about the development of American batteries, they will point out to CSIR, and some of the people moved to America to do it. And if you charge them for that patent, you would have had a lot of money, therefore you wouldn't need the funding, but you did. Yes. So what happens in terms of given the space that we currently operate in? So what happens is that now CSIR works on a contract-based research. So for instance, Mr. Africa will come and say, we want to see a way how we can help the province to transition. Then we can conduct that research. So we don't have a big leeway to say we are hearing now about vanadium. I think you've heard about vanadium batteries. We have vanadium in South Africa, and we have the capacity to beneficiate vanadium. So we can't just say CSIR now we are pursuing vanadium. But I also want to comment on the issue of manufacturing EVs that has been raised by Winston. It's not as simple as it might seem. He will agree with me that much of the decisions are not done in South Africa. Parent companies make those decisions that now we are going to manufacture in South Africa. So it's not as easy as you'd put it. So as government, as IDC and the provincial government, what they can only do is to put factors that attract. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. Factors that attract. And the issue that we forget is that, of course, in Africa, we are one of the largest manufacturers of automotives. but in the world, we are just a tiny drop in an ocean. So our volumes are so low that sometimes when the parent companies are making decisions and are prioritizing investments, you would realize that we might not be on top of the list. So it will require a lot of lobbying for them to come and invest. And the good thing is now we have other OEMs that have already indicated that they invest in hybrid vehicles. So I think what we should do, our position in South Africa, what I want to point out to is that, like as AXA was saying, South Africa has got a great asset of technology development in Africa, a great asset. If you check Times rankings in terms of knowledge development in South Africa, you'd realize 1 up to what? Probably up to 9 top universities in Africa and South Africa. That says a lot. That says a lot. So South Africa can be a pivot for the development of EVs and export northward. And I think it will give Transnet, it will remove pressure on Transnet in terms of Durban, because we will be pushing the freight up north really. So there are a lot of opportunities really in that we can really bank on as South Africa.
On top of what you've said and what I've picked up in our first panel discussion, the ability to influence and to create strategic partnerships and integration of the network has become really critical and has seemed to play a good part in the solution that's required to move automotive parts based on our first conversation. Mr. Stevens, in your view, the DTIC, how is it playing in that space of influencing and enabling growth and change in the sector? Is that a fair question?
It's always fair to him.
I don't think they are fair questions, but I'll take on this one. It's you know, it's that I think since December what we've done, we've published a white paper. The white paper is like the blueprint for how are we going to manufacture electric vehicles for the next 10 to 12 years. But it's not a DTI paper. It's a paper for each and every department, municipality, whoever needs to buy into this paper before we can really bring it to life. I mean, we still get phone calls from a development agency or a municipality asking me, hey, we want to do a study. And I'm thinking, for what? Why do you want to do a study? We know what you want to do. Why don't you just get into your car, drive through the city, see where you can put up infrastructure to build charging infrastructure or whatever, and spend your money on for things to come. Don't do any more studies, because it's we've done all that we could have done for the sector. Yeah, and going forward is that we've had an industrial policy that has always worked, from the MIDP, from the APDP, and what we've done now, we've enhanced that for the OEMs to participate in it. We've made it more sweeter for them to start producing in South Africa. It's a more export-led policy that we are implementing, and this is what I call the first phase. The second phase, we will start looking at deepening component manufacturing. But for now, what I see, I've got a colleague from ITEC here. We are tweaking our incentives to speed up electric vehicle manufacturing. So it's for the OEMs to come to the party. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Do you want to lean in on that?
Yeah,
I lean in on that question.
I
keep
do.
forgetting.
I think it's a really great question, because I want to emphasize what Frank is saying. The auto sector has a very long and well-modeled industrial policy, whether it was called MIDP, APDP, we're now under the SA Autos Master Plan. From a manufacturing perspective, it is a great example of industrial policy, and it gives stability and predictability to long-term investment decisions. In the EV space, Frank was talking about an EV white paper. What has come out of that in a rand and cents context? There's other drivers that form part of that paper, but in a rand and cents context, there's a tax incentive for OEMs to move into EV production, in addition to the normal cash incentive that they typically can be getting. And component manufacturers get a much higher cash grant than they would get for let's call it traditional or ICE component production. Why am I saying that? It means there is already a policy in place ready to kick things off, and it's now dependent on the manufacturers to make use of these structures and get into levels of EV platforms. And I think it will come as individual OEM market requirements become more hard-pressed. You were asking about what would stimulate growth and I suppose development in the EV space. In addition to the policy work that happens at DTI, I believe the supporting infrastructure in place at provincial and regional levels is fantastic. It's world class. If you look at what you find at the AIDC, the TASES Economic Zone, the support for incubation, I think the Ford incubation model has unearthed some really good emerging component manufacturers. We were all at the launch of a facility called BAX late last year. I mean, this is a startup entity, black-owned, now supplying into a highly competitive global value chain through the work that it does in the Ford value chain, supplying one of the tier one suppliers. There's examples of that across the country. You've got component manufacturers who are exporting right now, as we speak, into global EV production platforms. Coming out of the MEC's area that she represents, Ikuruleni, there's a company that's exporting into one of the highest volume one-ton pickup production platforms in the world, including the EV line. I visited a company in Niger yesterday which has world-leading, it's called press technology, something called transfer press anyway. Forget what it does, but it's about best in class globally. We've got raw material going into the most famous electric vehicle production globally. I won't say the name, but we all know when we think EVs, which is it? It's raw material coming out of South Africa. So again, I want to try and emphasize that there's already things in place. Policy is in place, infrastructure is in place. It's just time for the market to get going.
And I think there'll be a point where we see that quick turn. And while we're doing that, innovation doesn't stop, right? Innovation doesn't stop. My last question to you, I have to wrap up, Winston, is around the innovation hub itself. Do you see that there's still energy behind innovating and coming up with organizations and solutions that are really going to play a critical role going forward?
I think just to dispel the innovation hub, I left there in 2008, so I think I'm probably way behind on what they actually do. It was great for us as a startup company at the time, you know, in terms of learning how to run a business. I think our real core technology decisions really came once we got to the CSR in terms of where we pivoted and how we moved through the business. But innovation, it's sometimes overrated. I think in the manufacturing space, absolutely. I think there's a lot of opportunities to innovate. But for example, you know, people will come and say, but you know, where's the IP around charging? Well, there's no IP. We conform to standards. It's an ISO standard that we build the charger on. You can't go and innovate and come up with something fancy and new because the cars won't comply to it. So you've got to, there is a healthy mix. Yes, you can innovate in your business models, and you know, if you look at where we are from an infrastructure perspective in South Africa, taking the decision to open the highways and get the equipment down, if we compare, there's a ratio that everybody looks at, number of vehicles to number of chargers, like, or number of vehicles per charger. Internationally, that's considered good in a country if you've got 20 vehicles per charger. Okay, so one charger for every 20 vehicles. Some countries have got as bad as 30, and there you're going to see problems. People are going to struggle to find a charger. South Africa is 5. So it's 5 vehicles for every charger. So if we take that as a rating, the sale of vehicles is about 5 times behind where the deployment of infrastructure is. So right now, we have conversations and people say, oh, but infrastructure is a problem. I say, actually not. Right now, vehicle sales are the problem. We've got 2,500 vehicles in the country. We can handle 10. We've got enough charging infrastructure for 10. More importantly, on the infrastructure side comes in how are we powering those. You know, and we can have the view that says, oh, we've got to be independent of Eskom and make it solar. I don't believe that at all. We work closely with Eskom. We've got to work with Eskom. Eskom does have issues. We've got to help them solve those issues. We've got to build the right hybrid systems that make sense and make sense. You know, we're all in the same boat. And if there's a hole in this boat, we're all going to go down together. So Eskom is maybe that hole to some extent. We've got to fix it, we've got to manage it, we've got to work with it. So we roll out infrastructure, first and foremost using Eskom power. Yes, we then do look and say, is there more stress in this area? Can we help to alleviate? But the question is not make the charger green. It's, are we alleviating stress in the area to give Eskom more options and allow them to do other things? Then we'll start looking at making it green. And I think it's building those partnerships in the right way and innovating the business models that is not just about me and my solar. It's about, is this serving the purpose of the community? And how do we bring on this technology? I do believe the white paper is an incredible move forward. I suppose I'm already on record of saying it should happen 10 years ago. And I know we started talking about it 10 years ago, but right now, that's absolutely a great thing, and it's really going to open up the market. But what we've got to get run now is we've got to get the commercial side right. We've got to stop talking about electric as though it's a maybe. It's an absolute certainty. Yes. We've got to stop talking about it as though it's all about the fuel. It's not. It's about everything. It's better technology, better fuel, lower service, lower maintenance, lower running, more performance, cooler to drive. Everything about it is better. Get out there, test drive an electric vehicle and drive a car. Please, I have to ask, how many people in this room arrived in an electric car today at this meeting? One? And I know there's another one over there, 2. Okay. So 2 people that arrived in electric cars today. I'm sorry, guys. That's not very good. Okay. Really like to see that better. What's the target for next year?
What's the target for next year? Who's due for an upgrade?
How many will have electric car by next year in this meeting?
We need at least 2 tables. Target for next year, commitment for next year. One more. So there's a job to be done, right? And the job is perhaps not in the car itself or the innovation itself. It's in mindsets.
Absolutely.
It's in mindsets.
Spot on.
Yeah, but I also want to comment on the issue of the costs. And I think that's the other thing that we need to discuss, the issue of cost, and to tie it to what Ronel was speaking about, localization. You would realize because of the agreements that we have with our EU partners and UK, we tend to protect our automotive industry with tariffs. So currently, as long as we are not manufacturing those parts in the union, then you come back again. The first time I spoke with him, I was so convinced that next year I'll have an electric vehicle, but I checked the cost. Then I realized I just need to wait until my turn comes. So I think what is important, the issue that he was raising, the issue of localization, because the moment when we localize these components, then the cost is going to go down. Then some of the tariffs that we're supposed to be charged will no longer be charged. Yes.
Yeah. And those who are earning more, can you buy the cars first? Because the more of you buy the car, you drive the cost down for those of us who are, I don't know if that model actually lost. I'm not an economist, so I'm here today as a moderator.
Just a quick statement, and that is, there is this perception that electric cars are expensive. Actually, they're not. It's the more expensive cars that have become electric first. That's the problem.
Yes,
No. It's a very subtle difference. It's important, though. So if you go and compare the equivalent vehicle, go and take a 7 Series BMW with an i7, they are close to each other in price. Okay. It's the expensive cars that have become electric first. Why? Because it's a little bit easier to carry a premium rate on an expensive car than it is on a cheaper vehicle. And so that's the reason for it. But we are seeing the cheaper cars. The first under 500,000 vehicles are in the country. They're in the country. They're not yet on the dealer's floor, but they're here.
And also logistics companies are taking on board electric vehicles, which is really going to help from a volumes point of view and ease of access. So again, we're watching the development. It's slow, Right, so we definitely do need to find where the blockages are and open them up. And I'd love to open up to the floor for any questions. I see we also have somebody who's joined us, and I'd hoped you would have joined us on the panel, but we couldn't, the Chief Director for Transport Policy and Planning. Mr. Freeman, he's in the room. Do you have anything for us from your perspective that is critical to this conversation?
Yeah, I think, you know, from the transport perspective, the transport industry is facing quite a perfect storm from a government perspective. You've got, you know, 4 components that we are actually influencing how we think. The first one, you know, we've got the population growth. We've got rapid population growth. In Gauteng, you've got 60 million people that you need to move, and the population is growing at 2%. And then the second one, you have climate change that is influencing trends in the transport sector. And within, you know, we need to do something about that and convert most of our, and decarbonize. And for us, decarbonizing comes in quite a lot of perspectives. For instance, for us in transportation, you would ideally want people not to move. And then the second one, you would want the distances to be short. And then the third one, then you would like, you know, to increase public transportation. So your buses in particular, I'll come back to that. So then, and then finally on the last one, then is the decarbonization of cars that we're talking about. And then you then have also the issue of unemployment. I'll wrap these things up and converge to a point. There's the issue of unemployment. It could easily, you know, turn structural. Gauteng, for example, has got quite a lot of, it's a landlocked province, and you've got quite a lot of mining provinces surrounding the province, especially in the platinum group metals sector, which are actually very active at the moment with ICEs. So how then we view what needs to happen, and then the last one, of course, is the 4th industrial revolution, which is, you know, affecting everything. So how we're viewing this and what needs to happen is that in terms of the transport sector, which is the conversation today, we've got, Gauteng has got about 4.1 million vehicles in the province. And then you have heavy vehicles, you've got light delivery vehicles that are 23%, motor cars 66%, and so forth. So we are proposing that you then should have a mix of technologies, not only battery electric only, but a mix of technologies. The first one, you know, the most efficient, of course, is the overhead cables on trains. In some countries, you've got overhead cables running buses as well. And in Gauteng, we don't have that. So if we want to decarbonize, which is the discussion, then you have to look at that as well. Then the second part, we then would like to the battery electric vehicle, of course, is the second most efficient. So we'd like to see that sector, you know, taking up a percentage, not the whole. It cannot be the one size fits all solution for transportation. And then the next one, which we are really pushing for, is the hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicles in Gauteng particularly. Necessarily because of the employment that I said. You see, even if the mining areas surrounding have got a low uptake, you know, platinum group metals, then what happens? Then you'll have quite a lot of people now traveling into Gauteng for job opportunities. So would like to see those areas and the fuel cell EV technology actually growing at a very high rate, so that, you know, employment in those mining areas is kept on board. And then there are, you know, hybrid vehicles and so forth that you need to look at. So in Gauteng, what we're doing now, we have got, you know, GFleet, our government garage, which has got quite a lot of vehicles, 10,000 or 6,000 plus. And we're also actually looking at that model to see which areas can battery electric vehicles be be more efficient, and hydrogen, especially, you know, hydrogen in those hard to abate areas. That's what we're looking at. And then there is, of course, the public transport side, the taxi industry. They move quite a lot of people, and they've got these vehicles, and they've got old vehicles, and they have invested quite a lot in those vehicles for a long time. So what happens in that industry, and what kind of technologies do you put in there? There have been suggestions, of course, on battery electric vehicles, which are being piloted, but we are also looking at, you know, hydrogen, as I said. We are working with CSIR and the Department of Science and Innovation. We've got quite a lot of partners, even universities, to see how we can convert even the current vehicles into electric or into hydrogen vehicles. I think that's where I can end there.
And I think, Mr. Masuku, the conversations in our networking sessions are important because we need to come back and track what is landing, you know, what is in the pipeline, what is being delivered, and how do we start to see uptake. You know, oftentimes we spend such critical time planning, which is so important. And we often are afraid to fall. You know, but sometimes we need to learn to fall and hope that we are going to fall forward. I think I do need to ask for a wrap-up session, a wrap-up of the session. Again, the MEC of Gauteng Economic Development, Tasneem Mutara, to wrap up for us.
Thank you so much for moderating the two panels, and thank you for the discussions. And I think the one thing that I do want to say was that the two panels were so very distinct demographically. So if you look at the second panel, there was no female except the moderator, and it's about the new stuff and the future and where we're going. And the first panel was the inverse of that. I think there was just one male, but it spoke about governance, policy, etc. So that really does also display the sector, and not only the automotive sector, but so many other sectors where transformation must still take place. So we are good to have women leading government or governance and policy, but where the real money gets made still looks like what it looked like. And I think that's ultimately what we have to change. But thank you very much for that. I think going forward, definitely we've got to bring more voices on board. You know, just when we were speaking about it during the break with the CEO of AXA, everybody is in Gauteng. So whether you're a national department, whether you're a private sector, a DFI, a bank, an international player, etc., there's nobody that's in South Africa that's not in Gauteng. You're in Gauteng and anywhere else. And I think it's important that we bring everybody much closer so that we can have an integrated, seamless approach to anything that we want to do. I think the policy environment is clear and getting clearer. This week, the DTIC, through the minister, launched the industrial policy review. And a review it's in government is a process really where we just look at what has happened, where do we come from, but what can we improve? And I don't think it's the intention behind that the review process that was launched this week is looking at the industrial policy as it relates to using special economic zones to catalyze manufacturing, but also what are some of the lessons that we've learned, especially looking at SEZs that have worked and those that haven't worked. And proudly in Gauteng, we boast the fact that our operational SEZs work. And a big lesson as to why they've worked is that we have managed to pull everybody together. So municipality, which is a very important component, and I think if you think of Transnet, if you think of AXA, if you think of anybody who wants to do anything, whether even in the private or the public sector, needing a very capable and strong municipality is very important. So why our SEZs work is because we've been able to pull national, provincial government, entities of national government, the likes of ESCOM, yes, with all their challenges, and others like Randwater, etc., together to be able to do the work that we all need to do to achieve the results that we want. So in the policy space, it's getting clearer, there's constant improvement, and I think definitely, while slow in some instances, it's often because it's for us, we've got to get it right in South Africa for the continent to get it right as well. And a lot of it means that it's uncharted waters for the continent, definitely for the country, and if we get it wrong, we also lead everybody down an incorrect path. So the slowness, and I think definitely going forward, there is going to be greater levels of agility and speed within which we do these things. So of course the electric motor vehicle space, I think a lot about consumer education needs to be addressed. It's a behavioral change. If you think about, so better the devil you know than the one you don't, and we can use that phrase in many contexts, but we'll just stick to EVs for now. But the fact is that, and often the private sector and government working together must drive consumer change behavior. And how do we do that together? So the airport, AXA as a prime example, the space there, how do we increase the visibility of EV chargers there? Because so many consumers use your space, as expensive as it is to park your car when you travel, but there's so many of us that park our cars there on a day-to-day basis. How do we work together with AXA to be able to make it more consumer-friendly, understanding what it is, it's the availability, and I think we've spoken about that, and we do have lots of plans working with AXA to be able to address not only these and the inputs that the CEO made around the logistics, but even in localizing. And I think we've spoken, we actually have gone quite far now, CEO, with the technical teams just looking at, as they roll out and plan to spend this 5+ billion rand, how much are we dedicating in terms of localization to be able to do all of that, and later not only downstream but also upstream, because I think that's very important. Yes, a lot has been spoken about, do these policies work? Do SEZs work? Does the black industrialist work? Does anything that we want to introduce, does it work? I think all of these do work if we have a collaborative buy-in approach to it. I think if we have continued skepticism to what government is trying to introduce, especially from the private sector, and not enough buy-in from the private sector, that's where we'll have this disjuncture that has happened for quite a long time. And I think going forward, though, there will be an improved way in which we work. From our side, of course, the automotive sector is one that, just from a statistic point of view, Ford on its own produces 1% of, so our 33% GDP that we contribute to the country, 1% of that is accounted for just by Ford. So it's by no means, the automotive sector is by no means a small contributor to the overall picture of what Gauteng contributes to the GDP of the country and the GDP of the continent. So if you've looked at the latest figures, GDP figures, South Africa is the largest GDP on the continent, followed by Egypt and Nigeria. That means that Gauteng, 1/3 of the total country's GDP, accounts for 1/3 of the biggest GDP on the continent. So if we can understand in context what that means, if things go wrong in Gauteng, it will go wrong for the entire continent, not just the country. So we've got to get it right. We have to work together. We've got to position and reposition entities such as the Innovation Hub to do what its name suggests. And I think, Mr. Jordan, thank you so much just for really, telling us about your journey and how, while you started at Innovation Hub, ultimately it was also the work through CSIR that got you to where you are today. Maybe just the last point is that South Africa has always been a leader in innovation, in technology, in resource development and capabilities. And often, we traveled the world, we are told that, but you are coming to us to learn this, but we learned it from you. And I think that's where we've got to take South Africa back to. All of us collectively and individually. EXA has built, has been in the planning and involved in building some of the world-class airports around the world. But they've taken that expertise from EXA and improved on it. And I think that's what we've got to go back to doing here at home. That expertise, that knowledge, it's here, it is here. How do we harness it to continue being global leaders in innovation, in technology, in resource development, in capabilities, because I think we can definitely do that. We've done it before, and we can continue and should continue doing that going forward. I don't buy that everything that the world needs has been developed already. There are lots of new innovations, technologies, even jobs of the future that have not, nobody knows what they are. And I believe that South Africa will definitely play a role in developing them and take its rightful place as being a world leader in showing and demonstrating what it is and what the future can and should look like. With that, thank you so much to all the panelists. And I hope after the 30th of May, we'll see each other. I just need to take 1 week leave and we'll see each other again soon. Thank you very much.